Welcome to this explainer. Today, we're going to unpack how one seemingly simple mindset shift completely solved a dying industry and built an impenetrable digital empire. We're looking at the story, the underlying strategy, and the actual mechanics behind Spotify. So let's dive right into this, because to really understand the sheer magnitude of what Spotify accomplished, we have to start by completely resetting our perspective.
Picture this, it's 2003, and you're probably asking yourself, why pay $20 for one CD when I can literally get every song for free? I mean, CD sales are absolutely collapsing at this point. People are flocking to platforms like Napster and Kazaa. Everyone is pirating songs because, well, from a consumer's perspective, that logic makes total sense. Record companies are losing billions, artists are furious, and the entire music industry honestly believes the internet has killed music forever. They are in pure panic mode. But this isn't just a story about the death of the music industry. It's the story of how a very specific type of mind approached that exact problem.
So meet Daniel Ek, and we aren't just going to look at him as some brilliant coder. At 13 years old, he was already building websites. By 18, he was running a business that had him out-earning his own teachers. He was selling businesses before most people even finish college. And then at just 23 years old, he retires. Imagine that, retiring at 23. Sounds like the ultimate dream, right? But he actually gets incredibly bored. One day he goes out, buys a Ferrari, and then quickly realizes, this isn't actually making me happy. Money alone wasn't the answer. He needed a massive problem to solve, and he found the biggest, most unsolvable problem of the decade. He looked at the music industry's collapse and asked himself this one fundamental question: what if I build something better than piracy? This is our first core business lesson today. You see, the record labels were trying to sue their way out of the problem, but Ek realized you cannot simply legislate or sue piracy away when consumer behavior has already shifted. His product philosophy was absolutely brilliant. He knew he had to out-innovate it. He wanted to build a product so incredibly fast, seamless, and user-friendly that illegal downloading simply became useless. He didn't want to fight the pirates. He wanted to make their product completely irrelevant.
Section 1. The Valley of Death. Convincing the Giants.
Okay, so having a great product philosophy is one thing, right? But the best app in the world means absolutely nothing without the product people actually want. Without music, Spotify is nothing. And to get that music, they needed permission from the ultimate gatekeepers, the biggest record labels on the planet. We're talking Sony, Universal, and Warner. Picture a 23-year-old kid walking into these massive corporate offices and essentially saying, "Hey, trust me, give me all your music." They literally laughed at him. There was no way they were handing over their catalogs to a kid from Sweden. What followed were years, not weeks, not months, but years of grueling, suspenseful negotiations before Spotify could secure the licensing they needed just to launch.
Now, you might assume that once you launch a great app, boom, it's instant success. But when Spotify actually launches, almost nobody is paying for it at first. And keeping the platform alive? Wildly expensive. Service costs money, employees cost money, and crucially, paying out those music royalties costs a ton of money. Spotify was losing millions of dollars, year after year. Even today, it surprises people to learn that Spotify spent years operating in the red while aggressively chasing user growth. They bled cash, like heavy, heavy losses, just trying to survive.
Section 2. The Goliath Threat. Changing the game.
Right when Spotify is barely keeping its head above water, the ultimate competitor steps into the arena: Apple. Apple already completely dominated music downloads through iTunes. Competing against one of the biggest tech giants in history seemed like an absolute death sentence for a startup. But instead of trying to copy them, Spotify completely changed the game. Think about the difference here. Apple sells songs. You pay $1, you own the digital file. But Spotify, they sell access. You don't own anything, but you get the keys to the entire world's music catalog. That single shift fundamentally changed consumer behavior forever. They weren't fighting over who could sell a file better, they changed what the consumer was actually buying in the first place.
Section 3. The Ultimate Data Moat. Learning you.
Now that they had successfully changed consumer behavior, Spotify had to figure out how to keep those consumers from leaving. And here is our second core business lesson. Spotify wasn't just selling access to songs, it was actually learning you. The app tracks every single skip, every replay, every playlist you create, every sad late-night song you listen to alone in the dark. The app isn't just a music player, it's a highly sophisticated data engine tracking every single interaction. Over time, Spotify quietly built a profile of your entire auditory life, eventually knowing your exact music taste, sometimes even better than you know it yourself.
And all of that data, it culminated in this massive moment in 2015 when Discover Weekly arrived.
When this feature dropped, it sent absolute shockwaves through the user base. People were genuinely shocked, asking, wait, how does Spotify know exactly what I like? It was uncanny, almost psychic accuracy. Every Monday, you got a customized playlist of songs you had never heard but absolutely loved. This wasn't just a cool feature. It became one of Spotify's biggest, most impenetrable advantages in the market.
And that brings us to the concept of a competitive moat. It's a distinct advantage a company builds to defend itself against competitors. For Spotify, their personalized algorithm is their moat. This deeply personal user data creates what we call high switching costs. Think about it. Why on earth would you abandon Spotify and move to Apple Music? If you leave, you lose the algorithm that has spent years learning your exact specific tastes. Apple Music would just be starting from scratch with you. That data advantage makes it practically impossible for users to just walk away.
Section 4. The ecosystem and the cost. Expansion and backlash. So, you have hundreds of millions of highly engaged users. How do you leverage that? Well, while Spotify kept traditional ad spending pretty low, their true stroke of genius was Spotify Wrapped. The financial cost of this is almost zero, but the global reach, millions upon millions of users. Every single December, millions of people willingly post their top artist, their top song, and their listening personality all over social media. It is pure marketing genius, honestly. Spotify took that deeply personal data, packaged it into a super fun graphic, and basically transformed their users into a free global marketing team. It's a yearly cultural event where you literally advertise the product for them.
But Eck wasn't satisfied just conquering music. They aggressively expanded the audio empire. Spotify started dropping billions of dollars buying out podcast companies, exclusive shows, and later pushing hard into audiobooks. At the time, a lot of people in the industry said they're wasting money, this is a huge mistake. But no, it was a massive, calculated gamble. They evolved from a simple music app into the world's most dominant, all-encompassing audio platform. They essentially want to own everything that goes into your ears.
Section 5. The dark side. The cost of streaming.
To really round out this explainer, we have to look at the real cost of this streaming revolution, because there is a fierce, ongoing debate here. First off, many artists argue that the royalty payouts are simply far too low to make a living. We've even seen highly famous musicians temporarily yank their entire catalogs off the platform in protest of these financial models. And there's this massive debate over whether the streaming model actually helps smaller independent creators find an audience, or if it structurally hurts them by devaluing their art to mere fractions of a penny per stream. It's a really profound tension between a wildly successful tech platform and the very creators whose art fuels it. We aren't taking sides here, obviously, but it's a critical part of the story that we simply can't ignore.
Which leaves us with this final, honestly pretty provocative question to ponder. Spotify undoubtedly saved the music industry from piracy, but did it save the artists? Daniel Ek didn't invent music. He didn't even invent streaming, but he solved a massive problem, piracy, better than anyone else by building an undeniable product and a defensive data moat. Sometimes solving just one major problem is enough to completely rewrite an entire industry. But the human cost of that solution? Well, that's something the industry is still figuring out today. Thanks so much for joining me on this explainer, and I will catch you next time.